Hello everyone, welcome to today's show. And if you're joining for the first time, this is part of our e-commerce series for which we meet every Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. We pick one solution or the vendor that we review independently, and we always have a very exciting panel that is willing to share their insights and wisdom. For today, we are going to be discussing and evaluating one of the sexiest tools in the market. And we are super excited about it. It's called commercetools. We're on one of the hottest technology that is Headless. So we are going to have a lot of fun discussing that. Before we do that, we are going to start with everybody's intros. I am going to start with my intro. If you don't know me, I am your host, Sam Gupta, principal at Elevate IQ. Elevate IQ is the independent ERP and digital transformation consulting firm, and e-commerce is, everywhere in every single engagement that we pursue. So I'm super excited to review commercetools. Now I'm going to move to Phil for his intro.
Hi, everybody. Phil Kerper, Managing Director of Ringling Business Solutions. We help executive leadership teams align their digital transformation strategies with their core business and get maximum results for the company. And I'm coming to you after several decades of work in the C-suite, working with small companies on these types of changes, and really looking forward to the show tonight.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for being here, Phil. Robert, can I ask you to introduce yourself next?
Sure. My name is Robert Brown. I'm principal of Robert Brown eCommerce Consultancy. I come to the show with 20 years of e-commerce experience from the Fortune 50.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for being here, Robert. And if you're in the audience and joining for the first time, make sure you guys post your comments and questions we typically cover during the show. If we don't get time, then our panelists are going to make sure that you receive your answers. On that note, I am going to start with a little brief, and then I will open up the floor for the commentary, and then we'll go through our slides for today. So commercetools, obviously, it's one of the hottest technology that I mentioned, and Headless has been trend. And Phil, if you are not familiar with Headless, I think we are going to be debating a little bit, okay? So the whole idea of Headless is, when you look at the commerce platforms, there's always sort of the debate between, how much control you want to give it to the business. And these are the debates that we have in the ERP community as well. The balance between your development and the business. So the way the whole evolution of e-commerce platforms, especially in the SMB space, if you talk enterprise, it's different. And Robert is going to have very different experience, because when you talk about the enterprise commerce, it was always a different deal where you had a lot more money, a lot more custom platforms. The experience was very different. But SMP traditionally didn't have as much, funds and capital to be able to invest in billion-dollar commerce, to be honest, okay? So, we had platforms such as, WordPress, Shopify, BigCommerce, Magento. All of them provided some sort of ways of allowing our marketers, designers to be able to create content easily, so that they don't have to go to IT and developers always to be able to create the content. But you know what? Even though you are providing the control, but what is going to happen is you are going to feel very tight, because when you look at the real commerce experience, everything has to be very intertwined, and you have to be able to call the APIs to be able to get the data. And when you have that, then you get the real experience. So now the newer technologies, there is a lot of development going on overall in the headless ecosystem at this point of time. There are some big companies that are involved. There are like billion-dollar evaluation at this point of time of these companies, and they are trying to bring the whole architecture that you are probably going to have in the backend commerce. So commercetools is I guess one of the hottest one. They are really ahead of the pack, I would say, overall in terms of their capabilities in the headless space. So I'll pause there. I'll open up for the commentary. Robert, do you want to start?
Sure. So the really great thing about Headless is the ability to customize. I was looking at some of the reviews that they had, and the one that struck me the most was one of the customers said the difficulty to implement and the time to implement that. And that really comes down to experience with this size tool in that size organization. When you want to do this kind of customization, you're going to spend a lot of money to do it because you have so many different departments that need to customize it to squeeze out every cent that they can from their customers and from their leads, right? And so they're really tweaking everything they can to generate the best experience, the highest conversions, and so you've got a lot of teams working on this and ensuring that you have an omni customer experience, and you can only do that really at this level.
Phil?
So I'm really interested in this concept and both seeing how it relates to practically what I've seen in the marketplace and then technically kind of what this solution is. Because what I've seen over especially the recent years is more and more functionality being built into like a Salesforce or to other front end systems or the e-commerce systems, and then because they're coupled, that it's creating conflicts. It's creating conflicts between the back end systems and what they want to do, where the sources of truth are, how, like you said, the complexity of the API interactions, and to actually go in a direction where we're separating the back end from the front end is super interesting to me. I have one client right now. That's exactly what their homegrown build is they built their own back-end functionality that is managing a lot of the information that ultimately is being used by the front end. So I'm interested in technically learning on this, but also from a directional standpoint, which one has the inertia to put a lot more head in the body or to separate it to two separate really functions. I'd be really interested in hearing you guys' view on that.
So what we want to do is we want to put a majority of the ag and gag where it's going to be processed faster. When you start trying to download that onto a customer's screen into their browser and have that do it, or in the front end, and you don't have the processing power to do it quickly, then you lose customers. And so you want to, this is where the architect comes into play based on each organization's specific architecture and what their tech stack looks like. But really, you want to put it where if you've got giant IBM 4x4s out in Colorado that are going to do most of the processing, and you're just streaming all this information back and forth, let them do it. Don't try to stick it on the web server.
Yeah, just one quick comment, guys, that I probably did not cover during our briefing is going to be overall in the advancement of the technology. And one of the reasons why these things are possible as of today is going to be because of the development that has been done on JavaScript. So if you looked at JavaScript, let's say 10 years back, this probably would not be possible. But now, when we are looking at Node.js, when we are looking at frameworks such as React, TypeScript, they have come a long way. So now you can really create that desktop experience inside the web. And that's what we are talking about when we look at Headless. Let's say if I look at my desktop app, and Phil, you have lived this life, there was a clear distinction between your ERP system that actually ran on a desktop. I mean, it was a completely different experience. And initially when, ERP system started coming on web, and it was like, okay, do I really want to use it? It feels, really strange. I just don't have enough control here. It worked as if I am operating on my spreadsheet. So that is the experience that is probably going to be there once the PWA is going to be in full force, and which is called, Progressive Web App is the name. They are going to have scenarios such as offline. Can you believe this? Okay. So offline, and I don't know how to put this one. Okay. So is it going to be like online, offline app or offline, online app? However you want to name it, but you are going to have offline experience on the real cloud and SASE composable app, which is just mind blowing in my mind.
And again, to Robert's point, that's speed of customer experience or speed of functionality, so that the work gets done quickly, is one really cool side of that I'm thinking about. The other question I have is this type of a solution, which lane is it in? It reads to me like there is a lot of work to set this up. It's part of the fact that it has so much capability. Is this an SME product? Some of their customers are large automotive firms, so it reads to me like it maybe is for a larger enterprise type of company. Is there a distinction in what type of company might want to use this solution?
So going headless requires an IT department. You cannot do this by outsourcing everything and just, you being a few marketing guys and some executives in an office and hoping, no, you need to actually have in-house staff that is managing this and on call 24/7, because, when you're a bigger customer like this, when you go down, you're talking like hundreds of thousands of dollars a minute that you're down. Or, when I was with Wyndham Hotels, it was like $4 million an hour.
Yeah, and just one quick comment there, Phil, to your point about where their play is going to be. So right now, it's probably going to be either custom experience or it's going to be enterprise commerce. If you look at any of the e-commerce platforms in the market, if they are going to be more of the content driven, irrespective of whether you are talking about Shopify, BigCommerce, your Magento or WordPress. But when you look at the custom e-commerce experience, for example, let's say if I am a mattress shop, okay, so most of the Shopify store are going to be, okay, here is your card, this is your store, this is your product, you add to cart, and that's it, boom, done. That's not the limitation of the e-commerce experience. When you go to things like, let's say, if you're going for the automotive shop or you are going for the mattress shop, they require far deeper capabilities. I mean, you can't just do this based on your, just plain vanilla Shopify or BigCommerce. This is really for the entrepreneur who just don't have enough IT budget, to get to a certain place so that you can really invest in the commerce experience. Again, your product needs to be experience driven, meaning, if you are trying to present your product where they need to feel it. For example, let's say if you say a real configurable product, for example, when you shop for a car, car is a very different experience when you are going to shop. You are going to be trying different options and you need to see that, how that is going to be reflected on the car. So that's a very different experience that, automotive companies always had that, even though they always had the in-person testing experience as well. Once you have seen, how the car looks, once you have done your purchase and journey. So we are talking about similar experience, to be honest. But again, it requires a lot of money. No questions about that.
Yeah. So, and just so that I kind of got my head around, okay, you have a IT department that can really put this together, build it and maintain it. You're taking on risk of uptime on some level, and you're getting a lot of customer experience in a quick and effective way. That's a certain type of company that comes to mind for me, right?
Yep. This is definitely in the 8 to 9, 10 figure range with the size IT departments that you need to support this. If you look at it from like a maturity model standpoint, let's talk about like product recommendations. A maturity model of like a level 1 is going to be, there's no recommendations. Then it's going to be a level 2 would be static recommendations. Then based on past purchases would be a third level. Fourth is going to be based on purchases from a channel, and fifth level is going to be predictive. When you start doing that AI predictive stuff, fifth level stuff, you're really tweaking down. Trying to take every single penny off that table, and you need special tools to plug in, and that's why you need this plug and play kind of environment.
That's a super good example. Thank you.
All right, guys. So I'm actually going to move to the slides unless you guys have any other comments that we need to cover. So here we are talking about commerce tools, obviously, and they have been implemented by one of the biggest brands. So here they are saying, it's a cloud-based headless commerce platform that provides APIs to power e-commerce sales and similar functions for large businesses. I mean, at least on Wikipedia, they are clear that it's really for large businesses. Both the company and platforms are called commercetools. The company is from Germany. For some reason, these things are happening a lot in Europe, and I don't know if it is because of the taste or they are slightly more progressive than North America. I just don't know. But a lot of development is happening in Europe and Germany and Europe for some reason. Okay. So here they are saying that its clients include, already, obviously that's a big deal. Nuts.com is a big deal. And Phil, you are going to like this. In 2019, they raised $145 million from venture capital firm Insight Partners. And in 2021, I think the car manufacturer, again, when we look at the experience from cars, car is the real experience. Okay, car companies have always been very progressive overall in terms of providing the experience, because for their product it's a big deal. So cars, airlines, hotels, travel, luxury, all of these sectors, furniture, I would say, mattresses, these are the companies that always were way ahead overall in the commerce experience. So here they have a lot of different car brands, obviously, and then they are, for some reason, I think in the developing market, they have a lot more appetite for commerce. That's been my experience as well. So they are saying in May 2021, and I don't know how you pronounce this one. Is it Ravi? I don't know. Group announced additional investment into commerce tools to fund growth into the Chinese market. And when you look at China, Singapore, Malaysia, India, these markets are way ahead overall in their commerce appetite. So I can see why they would do that. In September 2021, commercetools raised $140 million in Series C round, led by venture capital firm Excel, valuing the company at $1.9 billion. Billion with a B, guys. That's a big deal.
So that's a rocket ship. Okay, that's 18 to 21, 300 million of publicized funding, and a $2 billion, just shy of a $2 billion market cap. That is a rocket ship right there.
I'm telling you, Phil, and by the way, this is not the only company that has $2 billion valuation. If you look at some of these DSP platforms, for example, I don't know whether you're familiar with Bloomreach. They have roughly $2 billion valuation as well. So every single startup in the headless commerce space are probably going to have similar valuation, because this is the future. I'm telling you. I mean, there's no question about that.
Yeah, they definitely are riding it. And if you're investing in Insight Partners, that's 3 years your money's been out there. That's feeling pretty good.
Yeah. And one of the developments that is really exciting, and the reason why I am excited about this one, is because personally what I feel is there is going to be a hybrid. Okay, so when I say hybrid, yes, headless is going to be there. We all need headless, irrespective of whether you are SMB or large business. We all need headless, because the way the market is going to move, if bigger companies are going to provide better experience, SMBs will not be able to compete. Okay, so they have to do something about it to compete with forces like Amazon or other bigger companies. So there is going to be a little bit of hybrid play. So what commercetools have done, initially they were focusing only on headless. Okay, I'm going to be a platform. And in my mind, that platform looked as if you are doing ERP because it was really backend APIs. So what's the difference? Or maybe PIM. Okay, that's how these solutions were structured. But now they are doing a little bit of hybrid experience. So they have acquired a tool called Frontastic, and that is the head. Okay, so headless is no longer headless. I would say there is going to be a head with the headless. So, for example, if you look at the commerce tools implementations at this point of time in the market, okay, they always had Contentful. Contentful is another platform that we are going to be reviewing in a few weeks. So Contentful is going to be similar to the platform that you have utilized, Phil. For example, let's say if you talk about the Episerver or Optimizely, where you are going to get the enterprise capabilities, including your DXP, but then you have the sort of the content head that is going to give you a lot more flexibility in terms of building the content. That is going to be easy for the business users to be able to develop these templates, but at the same time, you still have the code. So it's going to be a very hybrid experience where you have both the perspective for the developers as well as for the business people. And that's what excites me, to be honest. Okay, so here they are saying, Fantastic brings to commercetools as easier way to deploy a customer-facing front-end interface in what can be a challenging deployment for headless commerce technology, which I agree. Fantastic will appeal mostly to e-commerce practitioners, and which is right as well. For practitioners, it was always a distance. If you are always going to be talking to developers, they just cannot do anything. So now this is going to be very attractive for them that want the benefit of an API first headless e-commerce platform, but don't have the resources to handle what can be challenging and time-consuming deployment project. This is what some analysts is saying. And then you have a product catalog, order management, customer data management. I think they are all going to be part of that. The commercetools platform provides an extensive set of APIs that client companies can use to orchestrate or compose multiple vendor applications in a best-of-breed strategy. And we are going to be talking about what composable means in the e-commerce context. It's not really your CRM play the way you mentioned, Phil, when you were comparing this with Salesforce. It's not that, okay? They have a play. This is going to be a real commerce play. So the only difference between this versus if you utilize some of the monolithic platforms such as, ATG, Oracle ATG, or SAP Hybris, or Salesforce Commerce, or, Magento Commerce Enterprise One.
Yeah, I misspoke there, Sam. I was referencing Salesforce Commerce Cloud in that particular comment, as the front end.
Yeah, so this one is going to be slightly more composable overall. And by the way, the other aspect that we have not touched so far of the headless, it's not going to be just the web front end. Okay, even though you can probably build your omni-channel architecture using your these monolithic tools, such as your Salesforce Commerce or Shopify. But when you look at the real omni-channel capabilities, when you are going from channels to your website to mobile app to your social media pages to your Alexa, that's a big deal, guys. Okay, you definitely require a little bit of integration, and that's where headless comes real handy. So the more, and again, all of these things are driven a lot by Amazon. Amazon is a big champion and the investor, and by the way, Google as well. Okay, they are driving the development. Facebook, they actually came up with the whole React framework. The whole JavaScript movement is actually driven by these companies. So obviously they are leading the pack, and there's going to be a lot of exciting development overall. So some more commentary here before we take comments from you guys. So here they are saying a headless commerce option can take a lot of work to get it up and running, which is true as well. But now this is going to be easier after they have done it. But I don't know how many companies are going to be utilizing Frontastic versus Contentful, which is slightly ahead, I would say, overall in its capabilities when you talk about the real head in the headless architecture. That's pretty much it on this one. Do you guys have any comments? No?
Nope.
Okay, so here, now let's look at these screens. Now, when you look at these screens, it's going to appear very lean, to be honest, okay? And you guys are going to feel that, when I looked at my 3D cart or the shift for shop, if I remember, I had far more functionality. So why am I choosing for, less functionality here in case of headless? But then again, this is going to be slightly more API driven. You are going to have far more control in terms of what you can do. And again, we are talking about I would say the best way to describe this is going to be programmable interface. And I don't know how to put that. So basically right now, if you are going to utilize something like Salesforce Commerce, I don't know how much control you have in terms of, let's say, if I have appetite to spend $10, I want to display this particular component or this particular page on the page itself, or I want to swap out all the whole page. I don't think those things are possible in those tools. But when you are, everything is going to be programmable, that's where you get all of these controls, and you can build the component, you can swap out the component, you can swap out the pages, and that's where the power is of the headless commerce.
So the thing to keep in mind there is, with tools like this, you can build anything you want, but somebody actually has to provide the requirements for the dev team to actually do it. So you actually have to have the strategy behind the types of transactions you want to do, because it's not going to miraculously show up. So there would be some folks listening here like, ooh, can I plug and play these different things out of the box that I may get from some other provider that's monolithic? No, but they would maybe have different experiences that they're going to be focusing on.
Yeah, keep in mind, Robert, even in this case, I think they have some sort of template or the themes that you are going to start with. Even in case of, let's say, if you talk about Bootstrap in the JavaScript experience,
Yep.
right? You always had the basic framework that you start with. So it's not that, you are literally going to draw every single field that you want to have. You are going to start with some sort of template, and then, okay, tell me what changes do you want. So that's possible.
Yeah, it's usually what's going to happen in a situation like this is you actually go out and get a third-party design firm like Razorfish, who's going to come up with your designs. They're going to go out there and do UX testing and say, okay, here's the designs that you're going to build, and then you're going to take the template and match the designs that Razorfish has done for you and move on from there.
Yeah,
but I think that's a really good example of again, the lane. I'm working on the lane on this one. There's a lot of companies that's going to be really exciting. There's some companies that are going to say, well, wait a second, just get me a standard type of functionality, a standard type of look and feel, and let's get going, versus really come up with something that's a wow factor, which this can give you.
Yeah, completely agree, guys. So here, overall, from the capabilities perspective, there are a couple of things that are really part of the commerce, and they are trying to separate the presentation layer, even in the commerce space. Okay, so in my mind, the e-commerce was always sort of the presentation layer, but in that also they are trying to sort of separate them out. So one is going to be a real presentation, the second is going to be your commerce. Okay, so here, whatever APIs we are talking about, that's a real commerce aspect of the e-commerce. So which is going to be your products, your categories, your customers and orders. That's your backend sort of the commerce, and then you have the front end of the commerce, which is going to be how you are going to display all of these products and categories and that. So that's going to be driven by the backend, is going to be driven by this platform, and then the head is going to be driving the whole presentation aspect. Obviously, you have far deeper capabilities in terms of the kind of things you can do. For example, the variants, the master variants. Sometimes these things were lacking. I don't know if other platforms are going to equally support it, especially in the SMB space, but you have a lot more capabilities in terms of what you can do from the product data perspective. Now, this is the architecture that we are looking at, and I believe this is for one of the mattress vendors from Canada, if I understand this right. So this is taken from one of the YouTube videos, and this is the architecture that they are talking about. So the whole, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with MACH or MACH Alliance, they are supposed to be microservices. A stands for API first. C stands for what is that, Robert? Each is for headless, and C is cloud native SaaS, I guess. Yep, cloud native SaaS. So I got that. So that's the alliance that a lot of companies are, leading, and they are championing for an architecture similar to this. In that you are going to have a lot more composable app that are going to be doing a lot of best of breed functionality. But building an architecture like this, oh my goodness, it's a nightmare. It's not easy at all. When you look at, and by the way, this is all commerce, right? Everybody's sort of championing the idea of this whole concept of best of breed. If you go to Industry 4.0 community, they are championing similar things. If you go to procurement community, they are championing similar things. You go to finance, they are championing, okay, I need 40 tools in my toolbox. So as the CIO, okay, it's going to be a hell for you, bringing all of this together.
So I was really interested in how you're going to talk about this, and their M is microservices, their A is API first,
yeah,
their C is cloud native, and their H is headless.
Yeah.
And so, we have a lot of conversations on some of our sessions, Sam, about integrations and about trying to get a platform that does more, and the challenges of integrations. And this, I got to turn my chair upside down because this is the exact opposite conversation, right? So what do you think about that?
So, okay, so you are going to find this shocking, okay? So here, when you talk about commerce experience, in this show, I am going to be championing a lot more of the customization, okay? And the reason for that is because commerce is different, okay? Your ERP is very different. Commerce is very different. Commerce is very customer experience driven. And this is your secret sauce, to be honest, okay? So you need to have the customization. You need to have the custom experience. Your customers are your customers. Your customer journey is your customer journey. So you need to really enable that using the customized experience. The more customized experience you are going to have, the better chances you are going to have to be able to retain, to have higher conversion rate. So I am going to take a different spin on this. And if I were, let's say, the CFO, I would be investing on the customization on this one, and I will be bringing a lot more tools to develop the headless architecture, not for ERP.
Oh, I'm fascinated. I'm gonna bring that recording up in future sessions, Sam.
Please do.
So maybe I had this wrong, because when I look at this chart, I see commercetools as this quote unquote store backbone, and then there's a content management piece on this, which is interesting. And then the storefront is look and feel of customer journey and taking that front end and designing it. Robert, is that really happening in the storefront app and not so much in commercetools, which is correct? So I might have been wrong with what I said a few minutes ago on that.
Right. So commercetools is the back end. That's the headless piece of it. That's where the e-commerce piece of this is happening, right? And then it's going to serve up what the customer has asked for.
Yep, got it.
So in this architecture, I think, Phil, I am going to have just one problem, and I'll tell you what that is, okay? And you know me that I don't want to bring too many tools unless they are absolutely required. So I definitely like the aspect, the way, commercetools is done, to be honest, because you need that. But then you need some sort of head for your business users, because they'll not be able to do their job if you don't have that. So you definitely require some sort of head here. You require the headless platform for commerce. You require the storefront. That is going to be required as well. This is my problem. I probably don't need this. I don't know why they have Fluent Commerce for order management. They should not require that. Okay, so I don't like this at all. For the order management, they should have their headless commerce should be doing the order management from the e-commerce perspective, and then they should be going to ERP. This is an extra piece which I personally don't like, but other than that, I really like the way the architecture is done. That you definitely need to have headless, platform. And I don't know if that is going to act as PIM, because I don't see PIM here. So I don't know if PIM is actually being replaced with a headless platform. And then you definitely require the content head. Otherwise, business users are going to feel lost. And that's where I need that hybrid experience. But then you need the developer experience, and that's where you have the storefront.
Yeah, this reads to me like PIM is content management, and that order management is there in part to support the direct marketplace retail component, because there is not a line between the backbone and that piece, right? The store backbone is just for that online storefront. It's not for marketplace retail in this picture.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure I understand that. I'm just saying that's what the picture says.
I know. And you are right, to be honest. Okay. And that's where my problem is. So ideally, your headless commerce should be able to handle that. So let's say if I look at Shopify or BigCommerce, typically either they handle the channel or ERP handles the channel. Well, technically, you should be going to ERP directly for the channels, if possible.
So the reason they're doing this is speed, right? So we've talked about making sure that the transactions are happening as quickly as possible. So that customer, you've got 1.8 seconds. Actually, you've got half a second to process that request in the backbone. And then you've got to navigate all the way up through the various layers to actually get to the customer's screen, right? So it's got to come from the customer's screen, let's say over their 5G, to the telephone operator, across the landlines, to your processor, down into your machine, and say, okay, customer wants this. And then it's got to navigate all the way back up. You've got like 2 seconds, 3 seconds tops for that back and forth to happen. And so asking a single tool to do all of those things quickly at this level is unacceptable. So that's why they're not the commerce tool is not federating the content across all the marketplaces. They're letting Fluent Commerce do that. So they're going to be like some of the other tools that we've talked about that distribute across all of the marketplaces.
Okay, very interesting commentary there.
That's really helpful. Thanks.
Okay, so unless you guys have any other comments, now we are looking at another screen from them, and their primary data store is going to be really the product categories. That's their bread and butter, to be honest, overall from the data perspective. Order data is going to be really important from the commerce experience perspective, and they are storing that as well. Discounts they are doing, which is your traditional commerce. If you look at Shopify, BigCommerce, they all are going to do all of this, which is not anything different than what you would see in Shopify, except Head. Now, this is how, and this is probably is going to give you a little insight, Phil, in terms of how the development is going to work, right? So here we are talking about a bunch of components, right? So for example, you have, I don't know if you can see this, but you have just one line, and you literally can dump that line anywhere on your web page, and you are going to get the whole product functionality. And then you can control how you want to display that. So you have a little, HTTP tag or the HTML tag, that you are dumping on your web. And then you are going to get all of these composable components that you can bring together and build your commerce experience. And these are going to be, and my understanding is going to be, the way things are going, there's going to be a marketplace. Okay, the way your WordPress marketplace is, where you can buy a lot of different components. Developers are going to be selling that, and that's why developers are so excited about this one, because they all are building their IPs, to be able to sell. So you should be able to buy. Let's say I want to buy a cart, I want to buy a product grid, I want to buy, my search and merch. I like, that's the super best of breed experience. Okay, so it's not just the tool; you are literally having the best of breed experience in terms of the components as well, which is very, very, very WordPress. But now we are talking about the real commerce experience in large enterprise space.
As you were just talking, I think maybe an example that might help reinforce what I said previously. I think what we're talking about is an order of magnitude more number of transactions per second than SMBs would be used to. And that's why you have this segmented the way you do. If you're doing, a million calls, every couple of minutes, because of all the threads that are going back and forth, you have to separate it. Otherwise, your machine's going to kind of melt down.
And you hit the reason to go decentralized is the best in breed strategy.
Yep.
So the why are we doing it is that type of volume and speed. And then the benefit we're getting is in each of these spots, we can pick the best solution for what we're trying to accomplish. So that makes a lot of sense. And maybe that backs up. Why would you go towards more complication? Because this obviously gives you that.
Yep.
All right, guys.
Yeah. If you're at the, 10 orders a day, 100 orders a day, 1,000 orders a day, maybe this isn't the right choice for you. But if you're at the 10,000, 100,000, maybe that's something you want to look at.
All right, guys. If you guys have any other comments, I can take those. Otherwise, we have a great depiction of, how this whole experience is going to go. And here we have sort of the API hub, and there are a lot of different things that are happening. Number one, the APIs are consuming a lot more data overall from the commerce perspective. So here we are talking about commercetools as one. Then you have the APIs getting data from CMS, and there is another slide that I have, which will provide you a little bit more experience that this whole experience is going to become very circular. Okay, and which is powerful the way you, if you think about it, right? So, and that's why you have the CMS feeding to your API and commercetools feeding to API, and that's where they have the separation of, okay, this is your commerce, this is your CMS, and that's why you have all of those signals coming to your API layer. But then this is your business user layer, where you are going to have the pages and the components, and components are going to be powerful. And you have the studio as well. And in the studio, you are literally sort of patching them together. These are going to be your components, these are going to be your pages, and this is where the business users are going to be able to merge them together. But then you have those IT capabilities as well. So which is going to be your continuous deployment, continuous integration. You have all of that as well for developers, which is again very powerful concept overall that didn't exist in the front end space. So now they are bringing all of that as part of the headless commerce experience. And then finally, you are going to have delivery, which is PWA. That is getting delivered as part of the experience driven apps, I guess. Okay, so obviously one of the drivers is the GraphQL. And Phil, I don't know if you're familiar with GraphQL. The way you sort of queried things in the traditional world, it was very serialized.
I'm familiar with it. Don't ask me to write it.
Yeah. So, but I mean, it was a nightmare, to be honest, in the API world. It still is if you're not using GraphQL. So
it's not horrible. At least there's English terms.
I know. Yep. And that's the whole idea overall from the JSON perspective, overall from the GraphQL perspective, that business users can probably understand the APIs. And that was the whole movement of going towards JSON and GraphQL. And GraphQL is going to, the way I like to see these things is they are trying to slightly more ERPized, to be honest, even in the commerce world now, because this has all existed. Let's say if you talk to SAP, they always had those business objects. You talk to Infor, they had their ideas. So now these guys are trying to catch up with the ERP world, but more in the headless way. Okay, so this is the Amplify Studio, and the reason why they were using Amplify Studio here, and I think Amplify is from Amazon. Okay, and the reason why they would probably use this is because commercetools didn't have head at that time, so a lot of people were using either Contentful or they were using Amplify. So here, this is the Amplify Studio. So this is going to be your CMS, this is going to be your head that business users are probably going to be using, which is going to have the content, the user management, and this is the CMS component of commerce versus your commerce. Okay, so you have the content, you have the user management, you have the file browser, you have UI library, then you have the data authentication storage, and then you have the AWS functions as well, which is extremely powerful in my mind. And then you have all of that CI/CD functionality. So you are literally borrowing or buying these components. Let's say if you want to have a product widget that you really like from a developer, you can buy that. So that's a very powerful concept overall. Now, this is the data binding. So this is the screenshot from Contentful. And again, Contentful and commercetools, they were always used together. Okay, now data binding, when you look at in the traditional app world or ERP world, they always had the data binding because you had to have some sort of data source. So now they are trying to do the similar thing. In my mind, I think there are substantial limitations. I don't know how this is all working together, and now I don't know if they have to take any sort of shortcuts. But the way things are done, if you read the text, it seems like there are going to be limitations right now. The data binding is not going to be as fluid because they are saying this app can only be used with short text fields. I'm not too sure if I understand the implications, but seems like there are some limitations overall the way they are structuring the whole integration piece, commerce plus CMS. But the whole idea here is that, okay, your products are going to be sourced by your the commerce platform. The CMS is not going to be taking care of your product. That's how you are doing the data binding. between these two platforms. For example, let's say if you want categories to come from your headless commerce, then you can bind those. If you want to have your categories inside your CMS, so you can sort of mash that experience together the way you would like to design your web app. Now, this is the evolution screen of the commerce platform, and this is how this is what is going to be the future. At least that's what everybody's sort of predicting. But traditionally, if you look at 1990s, you had the Oracle Commerce, Webster Commerce. It was very commerce led, and the way e-commerce community like to define the commerce versus content experience is always going to be, okay, you were literally selling, you were not educating people. That's how I like to define. Okay, so commerce led, when you say it was very commercey, you didn't really have the content aspect to the commerce business, and that's where if you look at something like Magento, SAP Hybris, or SAP Commerce Cloud, that's where they became a little bit more content led, but then you did the commerce as well. So you had to have those templates and themes as part of your platform. But then you had the headless. By the way, this is their perspective. This is what they are thinking in terms of how this is going to go. So they are thinking, you know what, these guys at Shopify, guys at BigCommerce, they are not as cool as us, and that they are defining it as micro-led. But my expectation or the assumption is going to be that obviously these guys are either going to be acquired by Shopify, BigCommerce, or Salesforce. So obviously these guys are watching them, so Bloomreach is going to end up somewhere either with Salesforce or SAP, because obviously this space is hard, and they are going to want their skin in the game. So we'll see how that goes in next 2, 3, 4, 5 years.
This is optimistic for sure, and it also assumes that Salesforce, Commerce Cloud, Magento, some of these other guys are just going to stand still. I mean that there's places this is probably true, but this is a very dynamic thing, but it's interesting.
Yeah, exactly, guys. So now this is a very, very, very interesting slide, and this is where that circular aspect comes handy, where you are sending a lot of signals from your front end to back end to front end. It's all over the place from the architecture perspective. But it's not all over the place, okay, Phil? So I'm not calling them out, okay? I'm simply, okay, I actually like it a lot, the way this is done, to be honest, okay? So Phil is going to, okay, Sam does not really have any sort of positioning, okay? He's always like, okay, sometimes he likes it, sometimes he doesn't.
I'm fascinated that you're convincing on both sides of this fence.
Exactly. But in this particular case, I do like, because, you do need to have those signals coming from your front end. If you don't have that as part of your code, you cannot control the commerce experience as much. And that's why I like this a lot, the way this is done. And that's where I like the whole, the headless commerce experience, which is very fascinating. Personally, for me, I mean, being a developer myself, I just love it. But this is how the commerce experience is going to go as soon as you have the events. And this is the event-based programming that you were talking about, Phil. In this particular case, it does make sense, because the orders are going to be created. Those signals are going to go to your backend system. And then backend systems are also trying to sort of, utilize these signals, and they are going to send the feedback loop to your front end. So, yeah, that's definitely fascinating for me. This is the whole architecture, from the Google Cloud perspective. This is how it is going to be deployed, and you have a lot of different moving pieces. But this is the overall experience. If you look at, how this is going to evolve over the period of time, when we have, a little bit of appetite from the marketplace in investing in the commerce experience, it has a lot of different moving pieces that you need to have in your architecture to enable those crazy experiences. But those crazy experiences is probably going to be your competitive edge. So obviously you need to be thinking about that. So here we are talking about, I think Robert mentioned that, in terms of overall recommendation AI, you have the vision APIs, doing a lot of things from there. And that's going to be your UX driver right there that is doing the feedback loop. and then you have the static content completely separate from your dynamic content. And by the way, dynamic content is what we are going to see in one of the slides that we have, if we still have some time left, and which is going to be your rule-based pages, rule-based components on the pages, which is just mind-blowing.
So Sam, maybe I'm just not understanding completely this slide and the one before it, but as I think about, the interaction between let's say the ERP and ultimately the origin of orders, there's three kind of lanes of communication. One is the order communication itself. The second is customer information, and then settlement dynamics. And those three lanes can have different requirements and also be pointing at different pieces. So their hub here can certainly handle the order stuff, but let's say an order comes in and that customer doesn't exist in the ERP, or let's say you fulfill an order in the ERP and you have to settle it with one of the origins. I'm not sure. I'm sure they got a handle because those are common issues, but you don't see it here. You don't see how that works.
Exactly. So the ERP experience and whatever happens after the order is still probably going to reside in the ERP. You are not going to bring all of ERP in the commerce. That would not make any sense. Okay. So this is still very commerce driven experience, which is going to be far thicker overall in the pre-sales process. And right now, if you look at the pre-sales investment in general, when you talk about customer journey, the way they are going to be interacting with your brand, the way they are going to be consuming the content, the way they are going to be interacting with the product. Okay, once they place the order, then it's a different deal. Okay, then you have that customer. But before that, a lot of things happen, and that layer is going to be far thicker overall in the e-commerce experience, and that's the headless experience. And traditionally, you didn't even have e-commerce. Okay, customer simply called and booked the order, and that's it, done. Boom. Okay, then Salesforce has started this whole CRM play, which is where the whole play of Salesforce is in that pre-sales process, because pre-sales is becoming thicker and thicker and thicker and thicker.
and this I just may not be getting it on this one, but so if you have Channel Advisor, for example, and you're using that as kind of a hub to get at a bunch of other commerce platforms, and then you also have your own websites, right, and then you've got other commerce things that you're standing up. It may just not be on these pictures. I don't quite visualize how that all fits together if I was going to use this solution. Or maybe at that point, I don't need some of those other platforms and it is in this solution.
So I think when we were looking at Emma, that kind of describes what was going on. So there's the delivery network that was going to all the marketplaces and to the brick and mortar, and then commercetools was going to the website.
Yep.
Sometimes with smaller organizations, what we see Shopify be the primary hub because they integrate with some marketplaces, not all of them, but they integrate with some. And so it's all going to reside there. So I think it comes out to the size of the organization and what pieces you want to bolt on to get that ROI. Does it make sense? Like your example was an exception case of we take an order and we can't find the customer. So, from an e-commerce standpoint, we're going to ask them, do you want to log in for your special pricing? We can't find your account. Do you want to, we're not going to stop them. So we're going to say, check out as a guest. And then the back end process, the human process would be track down, why did this fail? And we'll fix it, from a non-technical standpoint.
Right. And I'm used to a solution to that. Someone comes in, wants to buy something, and the back-end systems, ERP in this example, doesn't have a customer record, is you put a process in place that one gets created. Yeah. And so that a customer then exists and that gets loaded going in the other direction into the ERP so they can get started.
And so that presupposes that you force the creation of an account.
Right.
And in e-commerce, many people say, no, we don't want that. You
buy as a guest, or if you want the special pricing, create an account, which that's a model I've used before as well, Robert. But that was helpful. Thank you.
So, Phil, there is a little distinction there overall in terms of drawing the line between your e-commerce and ERP. So traditionally, if you look at the ERP installations, they never had the retail customer inside ERP. Okay, what they had is so let's say if you have the retail front, your POS store, the only thing you got is, okay, Whatever you sold, tell me at the end of the day. I don't need to know who actually walked in the store. So you didn't have the customer record for that retail. So that's where the B2C and D2C experience comes handy, right? ERP was always sort of the B2B play. Still today, I don't think they are really designed for that B2C experience. So one of the real differentiator between your e-commerce versus your ERP is going to be that B2B versus B2C. So this is all for the consumer interaction, which is very B2C. Okay, so in some cases, you might not even have the customer record. But again, the customer journey overall is becoming longer because now those customers are going to come and they are going to ask for warranty on that product. So sometimes
that's a great distinction. The B2C is going to be buying credit card. And if you're willing to just have that dump into a cash account with limited information, you move forward. The B2B side of it, there's an account creation issue in terms and other things that you got to deal with. That's a great distinction.
Exactly. Okay, so let's do some more and then we can open up for the comment. So here, this is another slide that we have, and this is going to be the overall, place of every single tool that we have in this whole, headless experience. So you are going to have the content full, and we are going to be reviewing all of these guys, in our future sessions. So you have the Magnolia, Bloomreach, all of these are your DXP platforms. You have Sitecore and AEM, and then you have the head itself, and here head is going to be Amplian's content full. Content stack, and in this particular case, Frontastic, in my opinion, is going to fall in this too, right here in this one. And then you have the storefront. Again, it's a lot of tech. It feels a lot of tech, but again, this is all commerce. This is all B2C. This is all D2C is what we are looking at. Now, this is a very interesting slide, and this is where the real power comes in, to be honest, especially when you talk about the searchability of your product, the categorization of your product, and that's where you can make a lot of money if you do it right. Not every company knows how to do e-commerce right, to be honest, okay? So the searching, the merchandising, and positioning of your product, the way the navigation experience is going to be, that's where the real play is, okay? If you invest it right, then you can make a lot of money. So this is where your composable experience is going to be, where each of the layer is going to be sourced by a different platform, and you have a lot more control in terms of what you want to display to whom. And that is going to be very programmable, in the CI/CD fashion, where you can run a lot of experimentation. So this is just mind-blowing, to be honest, the way this is going to be done. Okay, so some of the reviews, and the consistent theme that you are going to see in the reviews is really going to be overall effort required to enable this experience. That's the common theme. But other than that, I think people who get commerce, they are going to be super excited. And obviously, they are going to have a little edge there. I'm not too sure about ROI just yet. Obviously, it's very hard to translate that, but it's a big deal overall from the consumer experience perspective. All right, guys, so I will open up for the commentary.
Phil?
Well, I should go last on this. This one wasn't one where I have deep experiences, so I do apologize a little bit for the questions, but I thought this really is interesting as an evolution. I do think their slide is somewhat correct, as an obvious evolution to higher volumes, more speed, and more flexibility in how you're presenting on the front end. I think there's still, for someone like me, still some good learning to be had on how this would be applied and what the pros, how it kind of works functionally. But I learned a lot on this one. Hopefully some of the questions brought out some good comments for other people as well.
So I think for me, this just goes back to looking at the maturity of an organization and where they stand in terms of their growth, right? And so this obviously is not appropriate for an immature organization because they won't have the staff or the strategy, the tools in place to properly implement this. This could be a wish list for later on, but you're certainly not going to build out this entire tech stack in one foul swoop. You're going to slowly start adding them on. And once you get the team in place that's capable of managing, say, an ERP along with your e-commerce tool, and you're kind of in a monolithic, and you're realizing, what, we're kind of hitting this head wall, and we're not getting the progress that we need. We need some more customization. That's when you start to realize maybe this is the time for us to look at the next generation and get that leapfrog. And that's where you're going to start to see this huge shift in your ability to control the experience.
Completely agree, guys. Any other comments?
Yeah, that was awesome, Robert. Very helpful. But Sam, this one was interesting, and now you're getting into some tech. So I'm sure we got a couple guys, a couple folks out in the audience who are absolutely gobbling this stuff up.
Yep, amazing, guys. Any other short comments before I wrap?
Nope. Sam, you were great. Thank you, Phil. Awesome job.
Okay, amazing, guys. So my closing comments are going to be, okay, great power comes with great responsibility always. Okay, so make sure you understand what you are getting into, because one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to create your ERP inside your e-commerce. Never ever do that. This has a place. This is very powerful stuff from the experience perspective. So make sure you are hiring qualified people who really know what they are doing. On that note, if you joined for the first time, this was part of our e-commerce series, for which we meet every Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern, and we pick one topic or the solution or the vendor that we review independently. So make sure you guys are going to be here next week. We are going to come back with another vendor or the solution. On that note, thanks once again, everyone, for your time and insights tonight.
Thanks, Phil.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,